There is an ongoing and attack.
Australia's Foreign Minister, Maurice Payne. The recent freelance trip to Afghanistan by two congressmen is shining a spotlight on how people are flooding congressional offices with requests to find out what's really happening there. One of those congressmen, Republican Peter Meyer of Michigan, tells Fox News
to be able to report what is going on so that Congress can not only exhibit oversight, but share and understand what resources need to be provided to those who are on the ground right now so they can continue to save lives.
New York's new governor, Kathy Hochul, says expect transparency as she increases the state's COVID death total to the CDC to about 55,400.
Roughly 12,000 more than her predecessor, Andrew Cuomo, told the public. The Cuomo count included deaths confirmed by a lab, but did not factor in those who died at home and in facilities such as prisons and hospices.
Fox's Gernal Scott. America's listening to Fox News.
Looking for a seamless medical trip to Manila? St. Luke's Medical Center's Pacific Islands Medical Referral Package offers a convenient end-to-end medical travel service to St. Luke's Global City. With the package, they also provide assistance in the processing of your air travel requirements, airport to hospital transportation, and hospital room upgrades, all for free. To learn more, call Phil MD at 671-637-5433 or visit their office in Tamuning across the Baltej. At St. Luke's, we love life.
President Biden hosted executives from major tech, financial, and energy companies Wednesday to focus on a core national security challenge, cyber security, telling the executives they must beef up their defenses.
Most of our critical infrastructure is owned and operated by the private sector, and the federal government can't meet this challenge alone.
Recent ransomware attacks targeting key manufacturing companies have highlighted vulnerabilities and threats at the White House. Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Not getting vaccinated is going to cost employees at Delta Airlines in more ways than possibly getting sick.
Delta Airlines will charge its unvaccinated employees an extra $200 a month for their health insurance. Chief Executive Ed Bastian says the fee is necessary because the average hospital stay for COVID-19 cost $50,000. As of September 30th, it will also stop extending pay protection to unvaccinated workers who contract COVID. Ginny Cosola, Fox News.
United Airlines says any of its employees who are not vaccinated by September 27th risk losing their jobs. Something else that's making Americans sick, an outbreak of salmonella. Federal health officials are investigating a pair of outbreaks linked to Italian-style meats like salami and prosciutto. Another tennis star bows out of the U.S. Open. 2020 WTA Player of the Year, Sophia Kenin, says she's out because she tested positive for COVID.
Kenin adding in her statement, quote, "Fortunately, I am vaccinated and thus my symptoms have been fairly mild." She's the third American woman to have bowed out of the Grand Slam event Wednesday, with Serena and Venus Williams both exiting due to injury. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Here at Guam Auto Spot, we have the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars, like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage, as low as $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Or this 2021 Buick Encore, as low as $237 per paycheck, 0 down for 72 months. Call 478-AUTO to schedule a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Hafaday, this is Congressman St. Nicholas. Your congressional office would like to remind you that pandemic unemployment assistance is set to expire on September 6th of this year. We encourage the people of Guam to seek out active employment as much as possible, as jobs continue to remain limited, and we want to prevent hardship for our people at the conclusion of the PUA program. Thank you, and see to us, Mahase.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Chili's is pairing up premium entrees with 2-in-1 entree selections starting at $19.99. Indulge in mouth-watering combos like the sirloin and ribs combo, the ribeye and jalapeno sausage combo, or the savory sirloin and ancho salmon combo. All served with delicious mashed potatoes. Dine in today and enjoy the best of both worlds flavor experience with Chili's 2-in-1 entree selections. Available for a limited time. Chili's on the second floor of the Tumont Sands Plaza. Chili's, savor the moment.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Not today, not tomorrow, not next week. However, if our governor were tempted, I suspect she would try to infringe the right to keep and bear arms. That just seems to be her MO here with respect to the office she now holds. All right, let's turn to Zemi Ikotny. Our view, this is a Daily News, if scientific reasons to vaccinate aren't good enough, listen to Pope Francis. I wonder if the Daily News has ever said that before. When it comes to taking the life of an innocent, defenseless human, listen to Pope Francis? No. There are so many good, logical, and sensible reasons to get the Wuhan virus vaccine. The vaccines are safe, developed using science that has been around for decades, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. I thought that the mRNA approach, to which isn't really a vaccine at all, is something that's almost brand new. They are not experimental and at all the normal stages of clinical trials and have been tested and monitored extensively. Well, let's gaslight a little bit here in our editorial. The vaccines are effective, preventing most contracting and spreading the disease that causes Wuhan virus. And for those small number of people vaccinated who do get the virus, it helps keep them from getting seriously ill. Those who are vaccinated also help protect the people around them, their loved ones, co-workers, and others in the community, particularly those who have an increased risk of severe illness if they get Wuhan virus. The vaccine also is effective against the Delta variant, which the CDC states causes more infections and spreads faster. If those simple and sensible reasons aren't enough, good reason to convince the Catholic community on Guam to get the Wuhan virus vaccine, how about this one? The Holy Father says it's a good idea. Now, the Holy Father says it is a good idea, and he does exactly what we thought that good Catholics would never do, and that is to rationalize away a moral objection, right?
Yep.
To rationalize away a moral objection. Abortion is wrong. Catholicism holds that to take one of the things that a Catholic is supposed to do is to look out for those who are defenseless. So you take an innocent, defenseless human being. You're not supposed to kill that innocent, defenseless human being while ever, but certainly not during the time that's in the mother. Well, you rationalize your way around that by saying, well, Yeah, but, you know, that child is the product of a rape. The mother was raped. Doesn't make a difference. It's still an innocent, defenseless human being. Or, well, you know, the child, the mother's life could be in danger if she goes through with a live birth. Just rationalize your way around it. Or the one I like the best, Vanessa Williams, it's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. So Catholics don't rationalize their way around moral objections. So if abortion is wrong, and if putting abortion to some use, to capitalize on it, to use it, to do something with it, is also wrong, then the Pope saying that it's okay doesn't really change anything. Does it, Jose?
Not at all.
No. All right.
Not to get all theological here.
Yeah.
But number one, the Pope is stating his opinion, which is valid.
Yes.
But it's not a mandate or a directive. And two, there's something called personal conscience that the Catholic talks about. That is the number one way to define how you make a choice.
All right.
Your own well-formed personal conscience.
And the words ex cathedra come into play here too, don't they?
Exactly.
Yeah, these are things, these are not things that become doctrine because they're spoken ex cathedra. Okay, but that, you know, the friend of my friend is my friend, right? You know, the person, he could be not the Pope is, but he could be the worst scoundrel in the world. But if he repeats my rap, well, you know, the guy knows what he's talking about. Yeah. The Holy Father says it's a good idea. Quote, thanks to God's grace and to the work of many, we now have vaccines to protect from the Wuhan virus. Pope Francis said in a video released Wednesday. He said vaccines, quote, bring hope to end the pandemic, but only if they're available to all and if we all collaborate with one another. Well, not only is he suggesting a situational approach to a moral precept, he's also wrong on his facts. Nobody nowadays says that the vaccine is going to end the pandemic. Even the most pro-vaccinators are saying it's not going to end the pandemic. The Pope stated vaccination is an act of love and that helping others get vaccinated is as well love for oneself, love for our families and friends, and love for all people. Love is also social and political.
Wait, he said that part too?
Love is also social and political. Wow.
Whoa. Again, opinion.
Yeah, and once again demonstrating the fallacy in leadership by a single person who has extreme power. Because when that person is wrong, the situation is pretty grave. He said, getting vaccinated is simple yet profound way to care for one another, especially the most vulnerable. Now that causes me to turn to something else that ran in the Daily News today. It's a column by Jane Flores, who is, as you know, the director of the, how do you pronounce it, Jose?
I mean, BWA.
BWA, the Bureau of Women's Affairs. It's not just initials, it's an acronym pronounced BWA. And she's talking about the illusion of equality. I'll pick this up tomorrow and talk about this a little bit, but for today, we are supposed to commemorate the 1920 adoption of the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote and all the gains we've made over the past 101 years. We've gained the right to earn equal pay for equal work, the right to be pregnant at work, to have an abortion. Yeah.
Well, if scientific reasons aren't good enough, listen to Pope Francis.
Exactly. A nice juxtaposition if you happen to, if there happened to be one today, there wasn't one yesterday, but if you happen to have the hard copy of the newspaper, the actual paper copy, you've got the editorial on this side saying, listen to the Pope, and you've got Jane Flores on this side, hey, hooray for women. We have the right to an abortion. Yeah. Nice juxtaposition.
Bob, I know I'm interrupting you a lot on this, but there is one thing I would like to add to the editorial that they left out. And this is real. This is from the Vatican's Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith. In December 2020, stated, a vaccination is not, as a rule, a moral obligation, and therefore it must be voluntary, period. But it also says it's not a get-out-of-jail-free card. There's still a responsibility to do what you can to help protect other people, but it has to remain voluntary.
Yeah. Okay, well, you can, with heavy-duty comments like that, Jose, you now have a license to interrupt whenever you want.
Just looking. Oh, there.
All right. Okay, let's go on to the Post. And once again, this could be the Daily News versus the Post. This could be on the card instead of Zemi-Ikotny. 79% of Guam's age-eligible residents are vaccinated. This means sweeping Wuhan virus restrictions are unnecessary. No! 17 months is a long time for the governor to continue to manage the pandemic based on extension upon extension of pandemic emergency declarations that have restricted our lives. Out of concern with the Wuhan virus pandemic, our island faces a return to tougher restrictions imposed by our local government and a continuation of a declaration of emergency that makes government spending using federal funds happen quickly and without much scrutiny. While it's true that the spike in the number of Wuhan virus cases, the 126 reported Tuesday, was the highest daily total in many months, plus the resurgence in hospitalizations does heighten some concerns, Guam today is so much different from the island's vulnerable position in the first few months of the pandemic. It is so no longer 2020. Here's the biggest difference. An astounding 107,109 Guamanians, or 78.8% of all vaccine-eligible island residents, have made the sacrifice for the sake of their family, friends, co-workers, and the rest of our island community, and the Pope. These 7,109 Guamanians out of nearly 160,000 who call Guam home opted for full vaccination against Wuhan virus, even when questions linger about the possible adverse health effects. Now, I got to go back to the Daily News here for a minute. This will be part of the ratio decidendi. The vaccines are effective, preventing most from contracting the spread of the disease, etc. The vaccines are safe, developed using science that has been around for decades. You go along, this mRNA thing is a new invention, correct? Yeah, it's not the way we understand. In fact, it's not even a vaccine, because a vaccine means that you take the virus that causes the disease, weaken it, inject that into the human, and the human sees the weakened virus and builds an immunity to it. It all started with milkmaids. Yeah. Smallpox used to be just a horrible scourge on Earth. And some sharp-eyed observer noticed that milkmaids almost never came down with smallpox. And a little research showed that cows are stricken with a similar virus called cowpox. And almost every milkmaid, who did it long enough, suffered cowpox, which was a relatively mild disease. It didn't cause you to have pox in your face, etc. And by the way, smallpox, we learned from our friend, the territorial vet, smallpox was in contrast to large pox, which were caused by syphilis.
Ouch.
Yeah, that's why we call it smallpox. So the milkmaids contracted cowpox. They didn't get very sick. They didn't come down with the pox, but their bodies developed an immunity to smallpox. So I can't remember who the virologist was. No, it wasn't Lister. Again, his name will come to me in a minute. Decided what we need to do then is inject humans with cowpox. And that's where the smallpox vaccination came from. So that's what a vaccination means. You inject someone with the actual virus or something close to it. The body sees it. It doesn't kill you. It causes the immune system to crank up and develop an immunity to that disease. mRNA is something totally different, and it's actually incorrect to call it a vaccine, unless you happen to be the editorial page editor of the Daily News, who says the vaccines are safe, developed using science that's been around for decades. Johnson & Johnson, yeah. mRNA, no.
Very experimental still.
They are not experimental. That's what the Daily News says.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And had all the normal stages of clinical trials and have been tested and monitored extensively.
Well, at least since 2020.
Yeah. Well, they've been tested and monitored extensively, but Pfizer just came off the EUA list this week. Moderna and Johnson are still on the EUA list. So once again, this will weigh heavily when I get out my blue pen in my ratio decidendi.
The smallpox vaccine, I believe Jenner.
That's the guy, yeah, Jenner. Yeah. The adverse effect, if any, may fully manifest long after this pandemic is well past our immediate memories. And I mentioned yesterday, I know a lady who says she's more afraid of what could happen if she takes the vaccine than she is of contracting Wuhan virus. I can understand that. When Wuhan virus vaccines were still under emergency use, authorization by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the vast majority of Guamanians decided to get the shots. It wasn't an easy decision for many to take the shots because normally vaccines take years to develop rather than months. But the greater risk, at least in the view of more than 107,000 people, was getting a severe case of Wuhan virus and ending up fighting for life in a hospital bed without the vaccine. The latest return to restrictions has cast clouds over private sector employers who are struggling to pick up from where the pandemic knocked their livelihoods down last year. Guam's very fragile tourist industry is now standing on even shakier ground once again. Tens of thousands of workers who are out of unemployment benefits or who still see the money dry up, are still uncertain about their employment prospects. And the way businesses have recently shifted from customer-facing services to takeout and drive-through could mean fewer workers will be needed and jobs in the private sector will not rebound anytime soon. A personal observation, Jose. I've noticed that places that I go to, especially places that provide medical care, just don't seem to be staffed the way they used to be. If you were to go to the Seventh-day Adventist clinic for a procedure that takes 5 minutes, better set aside a half an hour or 45 minutes for it. Because it seems that the object there is not to give people medical care, but to see how many lines they can make you stand in and how long they can make you stand in those lines. You go to the cashier, and there are 3 cashier windows, never more than 1 cashier. They've got 5 of what I call the airline counter where you're supposed to check in, 2 people on duty. Another clinic that I go to, same thing. They don't answer the phone. Well, they don't answer the phone because the person who answers the phone has to answer the front door, which is locked.
That's right.
And then they have to unlock the door, ask you the question, spray your feet with some kind of spray, and then let you in. Well, you can't do that and answer the phone too. So I just wonder if my observation, if this is just a one-off, and the same with banks, like the Bank of Guam. I went to deposit a check a couple of weeks ago. There were 20 people in line to deposit to get to the windows in the Bank of Guam. 20 people. And it's the Jigo branch. I've been going there for I've never seen any more than 3 or 4 people in there, So I just have this suspicion, and it's an unfounded suspicion, that during the pandemic, employers cut down, save money, and fewer customers. And then after they did that, they looked at the bottom line and said, this didn't work out so bad after all. We really cut down the amount of money we're paying out in wages. Let's just see what happens if we don't bring people back to work.
Yikes.
Yeah.
I think you're correct.
Yeah. All right. Tens of thousands of workers at sea. What can we do? There are things we can do to fight Wuhan virus during its resurgence, and many of us done our part. We can and still are masked up. We've become so used to frequent hand washing or hand sanitizing that it has become a habit. We can make sure to observe safe distancing from others who aren't in our households as another layer of stopping the spread. What has been the cause of the spread in clusters are parties and other gatherings that have become Guam's version of super spreader events. Perhaps any further restriction should consider a reduction in the number of attendees at large gatherings. And that's what Dr. Gwynn said, cut it down to 25 and go to the instant readable test. That's his suggestion. And I don't remember if it was Mary Rose or Dr. Gwynn who suggested outdoor dining, okay, indoor dining, 50% capacity. And once again, it seems to me outdoor dining, the risk of spreading it is pretty slim, because you got natural airflow out there.
Can we tell that to the Veterans Cemetery?
Yeah, right. Enforcement should be focused on those who show disregard for the safety of our community at large. Any shift in policy should be laser focused and data-based to avoid dragging those of us who have been doing our part, doing our part for these past 17 months. We should no longer cower due to Wuhan virus. Enough Guamanians are fully vaccinated, then even if we do get ill, chances are it won't be as severe as what many people experienced in the pre-vaccine era. Let's hope for some consideration in local governance. I'm not looking for local governance, because local governance, anyone who speaks out with a common sense approach to this whole thing is now seen as an apostate by local government.
I was told recently to just get the vaccine already. Do it for the common good.
Yeah.
I was like, what is the common good?
Yeah. Well, when Dr. Gwynn, I still wonder if he's safe at night from dead horse heads on the foot of his bed. And, of course, we don't know if he said, I've had it, I'm out of here, take this job and shove it, Or if the governor said, you know, Dr. Gwen, I don't think I could use you anymore because you can't keep your, because, yeah. Okay, well, not much question here. It's a fairly well-written editorial. I don't see any grammatical mistakes in here. It has punch, but when you have erroneous theories or you attempt to gaslight your readers, you're not going to get a blue star, no matter what else is going on. The Post, on the other hand, yeah, it was right on target, said what needed to be said it in a very workmanlike fashion. So for today, the Guam Daily Post, the coveted blue star. And, yeah, let me just mark that down here before I forget it. That takes the Post up to 254 blue stars. Congratulations, Daily Post. Short break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Starting August 1st, pandemic unemployment assistance claimants must start searching for work to remain eligible for PUA benefits. 3 work searches a week are required. Work searches include registering on HireGuam.com, meeting with employers, submitting resumes and applications, and attending job fairs. Only a few are exempt from the work search requirement. This includes those working reduced hours, those in training programs, and self-employed individuals. Remember, PUA ends September the 4th. Now is the time. Let's rebuild our workforce. For more information, go to dol.guam.gov.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so here we go. We're ready for the card, and I just got an interesting email here that I want to read into the record because I think I realize I know what the content is. Dr. Malone calls out FDA for a bureaucratic shell game of vaccine approval. On August 24, the morning edition of War Room Pandemic, vaccinologist Dr. Robert Malone, and you'll find out why what he says is important, called out the Food and Drug Administration for playing a bureaucratic shell game with their supposed early approval of the Pfizer Wuhan virus vaccine. In fact, Malone noted the FDA issued 2 separate and distinct letters. There's a letter for Pfizer and a letter for BioNTech. The New York Times and the Washington Post got it wrong. I'm shocked. The New York Times and the Washington Post got it wrong.
Say it isn't so.
Yeah. The authorization is not for Pfizer. The authorization is for BioNTech, and it will only be initiated at the time BioNTech product becomes available. The liability coverage, the blanket coverage that allows Pfizer to not be liable for any adverse offense, only applies to the Pfizer product, which is still under emergency use authorization. Daily News, how do I get this to you so you can get it in print tomorrow and run a correction? Therefore, Malone recommends that anyone who has to get the vaccine hold off for the BioNTech product. That's the one that will no longer have liability protection in the same way the Pfizer emergency use authorization does. In other words, if something goes wrong, you cannot sue Pfizer if you use that company's vaccine, but you will be able to sue BioNTech if you use their product. Malone also noted considerable incredulity that the FDA bypassed, disregarded the normal advisory committee and public comment process for this license. We did not refer your application to the Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee because our review of information submitted in your BLA indicated the clinical study design and trial results did not raise concerns or controversial issues that would have benefited from advisory committee discussion. Very interesting. Yeah. So much for the Daily News editorial. We thought things had changed under the new ownership. Even I can't be right all the time.
They did make the font a little smaller
Yeah.
and harder to read.
That's true.
Now I'm squinting, not just because I'm shaking my head with the writing, but because I can't see the letters.
And they changed the e-edition, too. The electronic edition is not as user-friendly as it used to be. They didn't change the editorial cartoons, though, did they?
Oh, no.
All right, so this is what we got on the card for today. We've got Abbott and Costello.
Woohoo.
Now, whenever I hear the words Abbott and Costello, a question pops out of my mouth before I can even think about it. Abbott and Costello, who's on first? And I've got GovGuam employees versus the governor, protesters versus the governor, Mummy versus the governor, Terry Untalon versus the governor, Terry Untalon versus senators, Tony Atta versus the governor, GPA versus Public Works, CRT versus Rittenhouse, and some of the older items on the card. So let's start right out with Abbott versus Costello. So I think you and I are going to have to play against type.
Oh, boy.
Well, you know, the casting director would take a look at you and take a look at me. I'm obviously Bud Abbott.
I can do. You want me to play the straight guy?
Well, and Bud Abbott was tall and skinny.
True.
Okay, so you could start it. You could start it off. You could be Bud, okay?
Sure thing.
Uh-huh.
You can't come in here.
Why not?
Well, because you're unvaccinated.
But I'm not sick.
It doesn't matter.
Well, why does that guy get to go in?
Because he's vaccinated.
But he's sick.
It's all right. Everyone in here is vaccinated.
Wait a minute. Are you saying everyone in there is vaccinated?
Yes.
So then why can't I go in there if everyone is vaccinated?
Because you'll make them sick.
How will I make them sick if I'm not sick and they're vaccinated?
Because you're unvaccinated.
But they're vaccinated.
But they can still get sick.
So what the heck does the vaccine do?
It vaccinates.
So vaccinated people can't spread Wuhan virus?
Oh no. They can spread COVID just as easily as an unvaccinated person.
I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Look, I'm not sick.
Okay.
And the guy you let in is sick.
That's right.
And everybody in there can still get sick even though they're vaccinated.
Certainly.
So why can't I go in again?
Because you're unvaccinated.
I'm not asking who's vaccinated or not.
I'm just telling you how it is.
Never mind. I'll just put on my mask.
That's fine.
Now can I go in?
Absolutely not.
But I have a mask.
Doesn't matter.
I was able to come in here yesterday with a mask.
I know.
So why can't I come in here today with a mask? If you're saying because I'm unvaccinated again, I'll break your arm.
Hey, take it easy, buddy.
So the mask is no good anymore.
No, it's still good.
But I can't come in.
Correct.
Why not?
Because you're unvaccinated.
But the mask prevents the germs from getting out.
Yes, but people can still catch your germs.
But they're all vaccinated.
Yes, but they can still get sick.
But I'm not sick.
But you can still get them sick.
So then masks don't work.
Masks work quite well.
So how in the heck can I get vaccinated people sick if I'm not sick and masks work?
Third base.
Third base. That's great.
Are we going on the road?
Yeah, we
No.
should, right? Let's bring back vaudeville, right? Bob and Jose. Yeah, straight from your local vaudeville theater, right?
And I'm so good, I can play the tall, skinny guy.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, you're a method actor. Yeah, when you went to actor school, they told you to act like you were a tree, right?
Well, I identify as a tree at that time.
All right. Okay, going on to GG employees versus the governor. GovGuam employee walkout planned for August 30, but local law prohibits strike. A walkout of government of Guam employees, this is an article from the PDN, to protest mandatory Wuhan virus vaccines and weekly tests is being planned. But it's unlawful for any GovGuam employee to participate in a strike against the government, according to the Guam Code Annotated. Title 4, Chapter 9 sets out the prohibition, and anyone found in violation of it is subject to being dismissed, suspended, or reduced in rank or compensation. It's also unlawful to try and instigate or incite others into violating the prohibition on Guam strikes. And they even, in the online edition, they even set forth part of Chapter 9. There's a definitional section, and this is how they define strike. Strike means the temporary stoppage of work, slowdown, or retarding work or services by concerted action of employees. I think that happens every year on the day before Thanksgiving, the day before Christmas, the day before. Yeah.
Arrest the governor.
Yeah. And then 9102, acts, activities, and conduct prohibited. It shall be unlawful, A, for any government employee to participate in any strike against the government. B, for any person by picketing or otherwise to instigate, induce, procure, order, direct, coerce, or incite any violation of this chapter, or to undertake to concert with another to violate this chapter. Yeah. So that sounds pretty ominous. So, you know, when you say that strikes are illegal on Guam, I think what goes through most people's mind is cops, arrests, probably book and release, court date, et cetera, et cetera. Not so. Striking against the government of Guam is not a criminal offense. No. There's a long section in the same chapter that empowers the Attorney General to bring injunctive type action. And of course, if you disobey the rules of engagement in your employment, you can be disciplined through the adverse action process. So if you were striking, your employer could issue a notice of proposed adverse action telling you why he's doing it, telling you what could happen. You get a chance to come and tell your story to the director, or do it in writing, or have a lawyer do it for you. The director makes his decision, and you've got a chance to appeal to the Civil Service Commission. From there, you can appeal to the Superior Court, and from there, you can go to the Supreme Court of Guam. But it's not a criminal offense. The call for a walkout has been making the rounds on social media following new requirements for employees of the executive and judicial branches of GovGuam. Sandra Regis Seo, somebody we know quite well, a very regular poster on this website. I think she usually posts as Sandra Regis, who made a bid for the Guam legislature in 2020 as a Republican candidate, called for it in Facebook post created August 17. The post has received 69 likes or loves and has been shared 55 times as of Wednesday morning. The power of social media. The walkout will take place at 8 a.m. on August 30 in front of Adelup. Now, am I inciting by making that announcement? I don't think so. The former legislative candidate specifically calls on GovGuam employees and Department of Education teachers who have not yet been vaccinated. Don't put this experimental vaccine in your body, she said, adding that there should be no weekly testing required if a person's not sick. It's a personal choice and should remain that way, she said. In the post, Regis also notes that the administration is hurting for lack of teachers and would be unable to do anything if a large number of people arrive for the walkout. It would create a huge impact, she said. Shades of 1981. A strike under 4 GCA Chapter 9 is defined as a temporary stoppage of work, slowdown, or retarding work or services by the concerted action of employees. The Daily News made several attempts to speak with Regis about the matter, but received no response as of 4 p.m. on Wednesday. Apparently, they didn't reach out to her. They just tried to contact her. Wow. She has not made any official campaign announcement for the coming election year, but her cover photo on Facebook reads, Sandra Regis, 2022. The PDN also asked the Department of Administration's Personnel Division on Wednesday whether a person who took leave to attend the walkout would still be subject to disciplinary action. No response was received as of 4 p.m. on Wednesday. It obviously didn't want to get involved. Richard Cost, field representative for the Guam Federation of Teachers, said he couldn't recommend that anyone walk off their post. The Federation is a union that represents government teachers, nurses, firefighters, police officers, bus drivers, and other employees. Anyone who did attend the walkout should take leave and remain peaceful, Cost advised. The Federation had no official position on the governor's order. That's the way to represent your employees. But any union member who suffered any sort of disciplinary action as a result of the rally could count on the union defending them, he said. Concerns from government employees about the mandate were flooding the union. The calls and complaints come in from near early morning to late at night, Cost stated. About 80% of the people were fine, but the remaining 20% were very strong in their opinions, he added. The union had found that there was no legal avenue to have the vaccine requirement for GovGuam overturned in court, and that a change in local law would be required. Anyone who has concerns about the way things are being done is encouraged to call the Honorable Lourdes A. Leon Guerrero at 472-8931. And then they've thrown in a reference to the National Labor Relations Act, which of course doesn't apply. Wrapping up, the Superior Court of Guam ordered an injunction against the Guam Federation of Teachers in 1981 over a months-long teacher strike. The Federation was ordered to cease the strike, which led to the dismissal of hundreds of local teachers. And I have an interesting story dealing with the 1981 teacher strike. Let's take a short break. I'll come back and do that, and then we'll go to another Joe.
Diving and seeing our coral reef full of life.
I really love hiking the trails.
I really love going to the beach. The sunsets are amazing.
Your island needs you. Help preserve what makes our island home. Stop those who threaten our wildlife, plants, and environment. Install the free Toka app and report poaching, littering, burning, and other environmental crimes. Call 864-TOKA or install the free Toka app today. This public service announcement is brought to you by the Department of Agriculture, UOGC Grant, and Choice Broadcasting.
Here at Guam Auto Spot, we have the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars. Like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage. As low as $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Or this 2021 Buick Encore. As low as $237 per paycheck, 0 down for 72 months. Call 478-AUTO to schedule a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
So, the story I just read from the Daily News has a link to the New York Times, which ran a story on March 2, 1981. You know, that's over 40 years ago already.
That's right.
Seems like just yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how it goes. The tranquility of this most remote American possession has been shattered by the first strike of public employees on an island where the federal and territorial governments together provide about 38% of all jobs. The strike, now in its 7th week, has led to the dismissal of about half of Guam's 1,400 teachers, the brief arrest of 61 of them after strikers, quote, occupied the legislature, the filing of a total of 9 lawsuits by both sides, and bitterness that islanders say has no precedent. I just want to stop here for a second and talk about the occupation of the legislature. The story says 61. I didn't realize it was that many, but the legislature was in session. And back in those days, the session hall was in the same place, but there was a double door, huge, heavy double doors. And anybody could just go up and open the door and walk right into the session hall during the session. Yeah, it's very easy. And that's exactly what they did. And somebody at the legislature called the cops. The cops came. The occupiers sat down and had to be carried out of the legislature. Now, they weren't struggling or anything like that.
They didn't chain themselves?
They didn't chain themselves. It was a nice demonstration. They were taken over to a cyclone fence compound where the old police department used to be, next to the downtown detention facility. I don't know what's in that building now, but that used to be what we used to call Central. And they were kept there for a couple hours. They were let go, etc. And the interesting thing about it, the footnote is this, that it began the political career of Marcia Hartsock. Front page picture of Marcia Hartsock being carried out of the legislature. So she got some name recognition kind of the hard way, and she parlayed that into election as senator.
No kidding.
Yeah. So as a political analyst, my analysis is that, the electorate is kind of schizophrenic. On the one hand, they say, why can't you guys all work together? Let's all get along. And then on the other hand, they're saying, come on, we need some fighters in there. You have to fight for the people. And I suspect that she resonated with we need people, somebody is going to fight for the people style of voter. And I think she was selected two or three times. Yeah, she wasn't a one-hit wonder.
Marcia
Hartsock. Yeah. They were here for a long, long time. Marcia's husband was the executive secretary of the what would you call him? The field rep for the GFT at one time. He was another one of these teachers that packed up and hauled off to law school. Yeah. And came back and wound up at the Federal Public Defender's Office. An interesting couple. Okay, so back to this article in the New York Times, March 2, 1981. Teachers who earn an average of $16,000 a year received a $700 across-the-board wage increase together with all employees last August. We're talking March now, right? They were promised another $700 by the end of 1980 if the money was available. Governor Paul Calvo said the money was not available, but in December, the legislature voted to give itself, as well as top appointed officials and judges, increases ranging from $2,400 to $10,500 a year. Yeah. Then the legislature overrode the governor's veto. The action was taken in closed session without public hearings and in the form of a rider attached to an unrelated bill. It's kind of like history repeated itself with the WAN-PAT 10, right?
Yep.
Yeah. They must have gotten out the same article here and used it for their game plan. Governor Calvo, a Republican, vetoed the measure, but the legislature, with Democrats joining the Republican majority, overrode the veto.
Ooh.
That was the spark, said Marcia Hartsock, the executive director of the Guam Federation of Teachers, in an interview at strike headquarters. The offices are decorated with posters, some in Polish and addressed to Pope John Paul II, who visited here last weekend. You know, the Rotopope statue down? Yeah, that was February of 1981.
That was about 9 years before Poland was, what was that whole movement they had?
Yeah, Solidarność. Yeah. So I had a front row seat when all this was going on. And my wife was on strike. And so I had intimate knowledge of what was going on. And the hope was that when the Pope got here, he would take cognizance of what was going on with the strike and prevail on the governor to settle the strike with the union. Obviously, it didn't happen. The union, whose 2,400 members are evenly divided between teachers and other public employees, called the strike, which at its peak brought out 1,300 government workers. The administration, invoking a law that forbids strikes by public employees, dismissed about 700 teachers. They, as well as 100 to 200 other employees, remain on strike, Mrs. Hartsock said. Last week, the dismissed teachers returned to their schools, but were told they would have to apply for jobs as if they were new candidates for employment. The schools have been kept open by double sessions and the hiring of 400 new teachers, whom Mrs. Hartsock called unqualified. Governor Calvo said in an interview that the 400 permanent employees that the 400 are permanent employees. I'll come back to this right after the big halftime show, an interesting look at history.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM,
and 104.3 HD3.
Conditions grow more dangerous. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Americans trying to get out of Afghanistan face threats not just from the Taliban, but from ISIS as well. Late Wednesday night, the U.S. Embassy in Kabul issuing an urgent warning to Americans around the airport to leave immediately after reports ISIS planned to attack.
An advisory reading in part, because of security threats outside the gates of Kabul airport, we are advising U.S. citizens to avoid traveling to the airport and to avoid airport gates at this time unless you receive individual instructions from a U.S. government representative to do so.
Fox's Kevin Cork. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says as many as 1,500 Americans may be waiting to get out of Afghanistan.
We're aggressively reaching out to them multiple times a day through multiple channels of communication: phone, email, text messaging.
Rescue crews in flood-ravaged Tennessee suspend their search efforts after the body of the final missing person was recovered, bringing the number of killed to 20. Over the weekend, record-breaking rainfall in Middle Tennessee caused catastrophic flash flooding. Hospital beds are filling up quickly with COVID patients in Washington state. The state's health secretary says the number is doubling every 18 to 19 days. On Wednesday, the U.S. reported more than 148,000 new COVID cases. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky points out
90% of the people in the hospitals in Kentucky and around the country have one thing in common. They're unvaccinated. So, if you know somebody who's not vaccinated, for goodness sake, get vaccinated.
America's listening to Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
News.
The House Select Committee investigating the January 6th Capitol riot is going after a trove of records from federal intelligence and law enforcement agencies.
Committee Chairman Democrat Benny Thompson has issued record requests from the National Archives and 7 other agencies, including the FBI and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. That request to the National Archives and Records Administration is aimed at what was happening at the White House on January 6th, including visitor logs, events, and meetings attended by former President Trump, and communications between administration officials and other advisors, including the former president's adult children. At the White House, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
California may become the first state to pay drug addicts to stay sober. It's called contingency management, and the federal government's been doing it for years with military veterans. California Governor Gavin Newsom's asking Washington to let it pay for the state's program through Medicaid, while state lawmakers consider their own plan. A federal appeals court upholds the death sentence for Dylan Roof, the white man who carried out a mass shooting at a historic black church in Charleston, South Carolina.
The 3-judge panel found Roof was mentally competent and issued a stinging rebuke of his crimes, saying Roof slaughtered the victims who welcomed him and that he intended to terrorize black people as a whole. Roof is serving 9 consecutive life sentences after pleading guilty to state charges. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
And it seems you never know what you'll find at the airport. In this case, unpackaged raw chicken parts. The TSA discovered the mess in the baggage claim area of an unidentified airport. The chicken pieces were circling around the carousel with other pieces of luggage. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Hafaday, this is Congressman St. Nicholas. Your congressional office would like to remind you that pandemic unemployment assistance is set to expire on September 6th of this year. We encourage the people of Guam to seek out active employment as much as possible, as jobs continue to remain limited, and we want to prevent hardship for our people at the conclusion of the PUA program. Thank you, and see to us, Mahase.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Diving and seeing our coral reef full of life.
I really love hiking the trails.
I really love going to the beach. The sunsets are amazing.
Your island needs you. Help preserve what makes our island home. Stop those who threaten our wildlife, plants, and environment. Install the free Toka app and report poaching, littering, burning, and other environmental crimes. Call 864-TOKA or install the free Toka app today. This public service announcement is brought to you by the Department of Agriculture, UOG Sea Grant, and Choice Broadcasting.
Another great halftime show here on Tall Tales. During the half, I got an interesting WhatsApp that kind of goes back to my discussion concerning today's editorial and Jane Flores's piece. It goes like this. How is it, Judge K, how is it that the hypocrites never think that a woman has a right to protect herself with a firearm? And she does not have the right to keep the Wuhan virus vaccination out of her body. But when it's time for her to kill her full-term baby, then suddenly it's her body, her choice. And the poster says, only you could explain that to us. No! Well, I think I've finally met my match here. I finally found a question that even I can't answer, because there is no answer.
Nope.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to the New York Times for March 2, 1981. Governor Calvo said in an interview that the 400 people that were hired during the strike, what the strikers call strike breakers, that's what a strike breaker is, somebody who crosses the picket line to go to work during a strike, are permanent employees, so they got permanent jobs out of it. Mrs. Hartsock said there's a strong sentiment on the part of teachers to accept reinstatement even without salary increases if there are no reprisals. She said some gains had been made, citing as examples, quote, great personal growth, a feeling of self-confidence, and a realization of leadership qualities. Yeah, that strike lasted a fair amount of time, cost a lot of people a lot of money, but great personal growth, probably all worth it. Governor Calvo said only that he hoped the strike would be over by the end of the semester in June. The governor is one of the biggest businessmen on the island and doesn't want unions to grow, Mrs. Hartsock said. This is his big chance. Charges that Mr. Calvo would like to, quote, bust the unions on Guam have also been made by his predecessor as governor, Ricardo Bordallo, a Democrat. Yeah, Calvo, you know, a big businessman. He'd like to bust the unions. That's what Ricky said. The strike is the most dramatic manifestation of economic malaise on the island, whose economy is based almost exclusively on government service and tourism. Before the Japanese conquest in World War II, Guam's population, largely neglected by its American administrators, was self-sufficient. Today, it produces almost nothing and lives on imported food. Fewer than 100 people are employed in manufacturing, and according to the official annual economic review, agriculture is insignificant. Since the return of the United States' liberators in 1944, Guam has become mainly an Air Force and Navy base, the main storage center of nuclear arms for the Strategic Air Command and for the Navy's Polaris submarine fleet. About 1/3 of the land is under military control, leaving the population of about 110,000 little chance to return to growing food, even if they wanted to. It's unlikely that it does. Dependency on government employment is such that in a University of Guam survey of high school students last year, 53% aspired to work for the territorial government because of long-term security its pension plan provides. Well, that was then, not anymore. About 20% wanted to join the military for similar reasons. Despite this dependency and lack of productivity, the people of Guam have an American standard of living, greatly in advance of the nations of the region. In 1979, more than 18,000 people received food stamps, but the island has no public transportation, and nearly 40,000 private cars are registered. With President Reagan's emphasis on cutting spending, particularly in the social sector, even an enthusiastic Reagan supporter like Mr. Calvo expressed concern that Guam would be hurt. Already, about 15% of the labor force is thought to be unemployed. Joblessness among youth is even worse and is held responsible for a marked increase in crime. Guam's dependency is not exclusively on the U.S. government. Tourism, by far the largest source of income in the private sector, is overwhelmingly Japanese. Of 291,000 visitors last year, 221,000 were Japanese. 1981, 291,000 visitors. Yeah, this year we're looking at that as the good old days, right? So this is New York Times, 1981, talking about the teacher strike that occurred that year. I suspect some of our international radio listening audience remembers it. I suspect we have some strikers online today. So let's see what Another Joe has to say about this. Go ahead, Another Joe.
I was actually calling to ask if that law was you're saying that it's not actually illegal to strike, according to, or you're clarifying that.
What I'm saying is this: when people hear the word illegal, they think criminal law. Bank robbery is illegal, right? But striking against the government is not a crime. You won't you don't get arrested. You don't get thrown in the pokey, etc. It is a career-ending event. You could get fired if you strike, and the Attorney General has the ability to procure injunctions against strikers, which what that generally means is that a union calls a strike, the Attorney General gets an injunction ordering the union to allow or permit or direct its members to go back to work.
How would that look for a senator to be involved in that said strike? I have a vague memory of a senator getting involved up toward near Anderson, but the issue there was blocking a road as opposed to, I don't know, would that be more or less the same thing, blocking access to an area, or?
Well, Fernando Esteves participated in the demonstration at the main gate to Anderson where they actually blocked the road. I could make a pretty good argument that that's more serious than going out on strike. But if a senator, well, a senator can't actually participate in a strike. And now the comedians out there in our audience are saying they're on strike every day. Yeah. Because it would be very difficult for a senator not to go to work because a senator doesn't have a responsibility to go to work in the first place. A person could be elected senator and spend the next 2 years at home watching television and draw his pay, et cetera, because there's no compulsion for him to do anything at all. Might be a little hard for, I said him, them to get elected. But let's hypothesize. Let's say that this picket goes off on September 30 at the governor's office, and Senator X is down there walking in the picket line. Well, according to the law that I just read, he would be guilty of inciting, abetting, aiding, etc., a strike. So that would mean that he could be terminated if he were a Government of Guam employee. But he couldn't be terminated from the legislature because unless a majority of the members voted to expel him, which is possible but highly unlikely. But the governor can't call up and say, Senator XYZ, you're fired. So in essence, a senator can participate basically with impunity or something like this. And it wouldn't surprise me if it happened.
Kebab, if one of these sitting senators that was planning to run for governor on a Republican ticket against Julian Guerrero, a Democrat, this would probably make for a pretty good photo op if they knew right off that they were not going to run for senator and then said they were going to run for governor. Could it in any way be held against them? Or they get a lot of publicity, right, in the media. So that could work for them as long as it doesn't work for them legally. Work against them, rather. Well,
you heard what I said about Marsha Hartsock. She parlayed getting carried out of the legislature into a seat in the legislature. And I said yesterday that the Republicans, with actually only two exceptions, Frank Blas and Chris Duenas, have not taken an aggressive approach against the governor's tyranny. And if they want to take the majority of the legislature, they have to be able to show the people that things would be better under a Republican majority than they are right now. And the same goes for the governor. And my sense of analyzing politics means that they have to aggressively oppose what the governor is doing right now to have a shot at either one of those. So going down and marching in the picket line, carrying a sign, that would be pretty aggressive. How it would actually play out, that's why politics is so interesting. There are people who make fortunes doing political analysis as to what works, what doesn't work, calling the races, etc., and oftentimes they're no more accurate than my crystal ball.
Well, there you go, Kebab. We heard it first on the Tall Tales. Any of you sitting senators plan to run for governor, you know it. You're not going to run for senator. You're going to run for governor. This is the time to go out and participate in the
well, it's time to give it some consideration to weigh the pros and cons.
Thanks for your time, Kebab. I'll just keep listening.
Okay, another Joe. Thanks for calling.
I think another Joe's running for governor.
Could be. Yeah, maybe he'll be down there. I should have asked him, another Joe, are you going to be down there on Friday saying another Joe 2022 on your sign, right? Okay, next on the card is Mummy versus the governor. Mummy being Carmen Kasperbauer. Yeah.
I didn't know that was her name.
Well, if your name is, everybody whose name is Carmen is Mummy. It's what we call the Naan Querido. Yeah. Former Senator Carmen Casper-Bauer, nurse, etc., very well-respected person in the community, certainly not a bomb thrower or a radical or a rabble-rouser, right?
But a straight shooter.
A straight shooter. I am dismayed over the governor's last mandate, which forces people to get vaccinated. Mandating people to do all she wants beyond the individual's right is very wrong. Lou, you are only elected to govern, not to force people to do what is unconscionable for them. No! Have you forgotten the inalienable rights of our people? Governor Lou, please rescind your unreasonable mandate. We are angry about your abuse of power, but we still love you and are praying for you, asking God our Father to guide you in governing our people. We know you have a very challenging and sometimes painful job to help save the lives of the people of Guam. We don't envy your position. However, there are many unknowns about this man-made virus and the power that wants the world. One government is at hand. Yeah.
That was ominous.
Exactly. Let's not all be sheep to be led into the slaughterhouse. Let us all pray and do penance to save our children from this spiritual destruction. Carmen Casper-Bauer. Pretty interesting, huh? Next, I have an open letter to the lawmakers. This is from Terry Untalon.
Another straight shooter.
Another straight shooter, not a bomb thrower, not a rabble-rouser. Yeah. And here's what she says. Senators, I wrote to you previously in private to seek relief. The public health emergency declaration must cease. I now know that your constituents' constitutional rights are irrelevant to you. Calling them out. That you continue to condone the removal of citizens' rights to make their personal informed decisions regarding their welfare, and in particular their health, is unconscionable. That's a word you hardly ever hear. Now you're hearing it all the time. That you continue to allow our island's economy to be decimated is unforgivable. The Wuhan virus pandemic is endemic. It is now part of our new normal, like colds or flu. Like the flu, it will evolve into variants and will continue for years to come. Like the flu, which had its genesis in the deadly Spanish flu in the early 20th century, it's here to stay. This is not a pandemic of the unvaccinated, but it is certainly a pandemic of fear-mongering. Dictating what people put into their bodies is their personal choice. Be it good or ill, let it remain their choice, and it should not be enforced by the government for the, quote, public good. I am beyond disappointed. I am outraged that our island has been in a public health emergency for 17 months. The governor does not care for the democratic process, which our way of government prescribes. She is very confident in her rule of executive orders and wants to govern in no other way. You senators are complicit in the continuation of this rule of one. I mark you as an enemy of democracy along with a elected sitting governor. Citizens of the United States living in Guam, remember the lawmakers who ceded their power to legislate to the dictatorship of Lou Leon Guerrero, Sabina Paris, Clint Rigel, Amanda Shelton, Jose Terlahi, and Mary Torres are complicit in the methodical removal of citizens' rights. For being absent and silent include also Tina Muñoz Barnes and Jose San Agustin. Let your memories remain long in this regard. Remember who trod on your rights when considering names on the ballot. Just let me repeat the names one more time. That would be Lou Leon Guerrero, Sabina Perez, Clinton Rigel, Amanda Shelton, Jose Terlahi, Mary Torres, Tina Muñoz Barnes, and Jose San Augustine. Names to remember. And then we have another senator who apparently is of the Jim Moylan School of Senatorial Activities. And he put out a news release on August 23, which I'm just now seeing. Governor Lou Leon Guerrero has truly crossed the line by issuing her latest executive order regarding Wuhan virus restrictions. I strongly oppose these restrictions, and I call on the governor to reconsider her actions and amend her executive order to provide for more reasonable mandates. Over the past year, we have abided by the restrictions imposed on us by the governor. While I have not agreed with many of her mandates, I, like many of our residents, relied on what was believed to be the mandates based on available science. We know much more about Wuhan virus and its vaccines and what works and what doesn't. With the governor disregarding the recommendations of her medical advisors, we now know that she is acting outside of the scientific evidence upon which medical professionals develop their recommendations. Another way of saying the governor has no clothes. And here's my analysis of that. She used the Physicians Advisory Group for political cover. You know, when I do these things, I've got my Physicians Advisory Group, and they meet and they give me advice. And now we know that they might as well write their advice down on a piece of paper, put it in a bottle, put a cork in the bottle, and throw it in the ocean for all that Lou is going to do with it.
Put a cork in it.
Yeah.
That's what she told Dr. Gwen?
Yeah, Dr. Gwen, yeah. The latest attempt by the governor to extend her authoritarian rule over our lives must not go unanswered and unopposed. The right of our people to determine whether or not they get vaccinated must be respected and protected. For the government to force this on them is improper and unjust. Our Constitution does not prescribe rights and freedoms of citizens written in a form to prevent and restrict government and government leaders from taking away rights and freedoms. This is exactly what the governor has done. I urge all who oppose this latest attack on our rights to let Adelup hear your voices. Well, that's interesting. Of course, being in the legislature, Tony, you got the loudest voice of all. And I suppose I'll get a call from a Karen as soon as I mention this, but there is the Bob and Ray resolution, right? If it passed by a majority, according to Section 10 GCA Chapter 19, 504, that ends the emergency and it can't be renewed.
Bob, I'm going to have to tell your manager.
Yeah, well, if the Karen calls... Okay, Bob, I demand to see the manager, right? Go! All right, next on the card, we've got the Department of Public Works versus GPA. And I want to take a short break. Let's go to Wrigley Field for the 7th inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Starting August 1st, pandemic unemployment assistance claimants must start searching for work to remain eligible for PUA benefits. 3 work searches a week are required. Work searches include registering on HireGuam.com, meeting with employers, submitting resumes and applications, and attending job fairs. Only a few are exempt from the work search requirement. This includes those working reduced hours, those in training programs, and self-employed individuals. Remember, PUA ends September the 4th. Now is the time. Let's rebuild our workforce. For more information, go to dol.guam.gov.
So here we go at Wrigley Field, the world's most beautiful ballpark located in downtown Chicago for the 7th inning stretch. That means we've got 2 more innings of Tall Tales for today, and we'll be coming back on the day of the week that Jose and I like the least, Friday. But we'll be back. So here's the next item on the card. Department of Public Works versus GPA. And this is a story that ran in today's Post. Department of Public Works stands firm on order stopping solar plant project. The Department of Public Works is standing firm on its decision to halt the solar plant project's construction in Manilo until the contractor, Samsung E&C America, has fully corrected the violations stated in a notice of violation issued by the Guam Environmental Protection Agency, according to DPW Director Vince Areola. Guam EPA spokesman Nicholas Lee said the agency does not yet have an estimated timeline from Samsung on when it can expect to fully comply. Jong-Hyun Kim, president of KEPCO Manilo Solar LLC, a subsidiary of South Korea's largest electric company and the project owner, said Samsung is working with Guam EPA and other agencies to assess the extent of the problem at the site and provide any needed remediation. The notice was issued in late July, after stormwater runoff impacted nearby private residents and Marble Cave, a hiking and tourist destination in the area. It was determined that Samsung did not properly follow approved sediment and erosion controls. The solar farm is a major project for GPA, both in terms of mitigating future fuel costs and complying with the terms of a consent decree with the U.S. EPA. Delays on the project or cancellation would adversely affect ratepayers through fuel surcharge and through federal penalties, according to GPA. Most of the work on the project is complete. Kim said they are on track to have the solar farm fully commissioned by December 21, and that they hope the stop work order will be modified to permit work on the solar farm while remediation is being performed. Korean Electric Power Company, or KEPCO, previously announced it secured $200 million in bank financing for the project. It hopes to recoup the money by selling solar energy to GPA. He also said they share the community's concern regarding the reported storm runoff on nearby properties, including Marble Cave. Well, yesterday I commented on one of the stories where Joey Duenas at the meeting of the CCU on Tuesday night asked John Beneventi, the director of GPA, to write a letter to the Director of Public Works asking him to let the project proceed, saying it's all we can do. And I recognize this, again, as a sign of learned helplessness. And just off the top of my head, I came up with this idea, which may be a good idea, may be a bad idea, but it's not learned helplessness. And that is that, you know, when you look at this and Vince's stand, no, you can't go back and work on the project until you finish mitigating the the runoff danger. So is he interested in fixing the problem or punishing KEPCO? Kind of looks like he's trying to punish KEPCO. I don't care what you got to do on the project until you're completely finished with the mitigation. You can't go back to work. Now, of course, GPA is saying the manager in charge of KEPCO out there at this work site, I just saw him yesterday. He was walking and chewing gum. Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't see him stumble. I didn't see him put his hand to his mouth like he'd bit his tongue or something like that. So he apparently, at least in his personal life, can contemplate doing two things at the same time. So the walking and chewing gum, the analog to that would be to say, you guys got to fix this, and you got to fix it right away. And if you make the necessary commitments, post a bond, do something, then you can go to work on your project also. I want to see your plans. You may have to bring in extra people to do both at the same time. But I'm interested. We're all interested in seeing that project completed, but you got to fix the problem. That's one approach. The other approach is, I don't want you to even think about lifting a shovel over there in your solar farm. Don't even think about it until every single bit of the mitigation is done and the EPA, Public Works, Snow White, Three of the Dwarfs, Goldilocks, all of these government agencies approve it. Then you could go back to work. So it occurred to me that there's a contract between GPA and KEPCO, and this, as I describe it, which may not be correct because I don't know all of the facts here, may be the tortious interference with contracts. And a suit could possibly lie. I don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea, but GPA has counsel. Counsel probably knows more about the open government law and the sunshine law than he used to. But you got counsel and you are a corporate body. You ought to consider all the angles instead of just saying, well, there's nothing we can do, let's write a letter. That's my take on as you were, Department of Public Works versus GPA. Going on to the next item on the card here. I got to page through some papers here. Wow, I hope I still have those old items. I'm not able to locate those items in my extensive filing system here. The next item that I was going to talk about was as were critical race theory versus Rittenhouse. So I'll just have to do this from memory. Bear with me for a second. Kyle Rittenhouse was a 17-year-old living in Antioch, Illinois, which is very close to the Illinois-Wisconsin state line, who worked in Kenosha. And one night, there was a riot that broke out in Kenosha because a police officer shot a black arrestee and actually crippled him. So we keep coming back to the CNN report of the riots in Kenosha that very night, where a CNN reporter was standing with a microphone talking about the mostly peaceful demonstration in Kenosha with a burning building in the background. So Rittenhouse was there. Rittenhouse was only 17. He borrowed a weapon from a friend of his in Kenosha and said he was there to provide first aid to any of the demonstrators or counter-demonstrators that got hurt. Now, some of the folks in Kenosha attempted to actually defend their buildings because, of course, any demonstration where Black Lives Matter is involved, demonstration includes looting, arson, and rioting. So some attempted to defend their buildings, and Rittenhouse saw his role as part of that. A fracas broke out, and Rittenhouse was chased down the main street of Kenosha. He fell down, and he alleges that in self-defense, he shot and killed another person, wounded another person, got up and ran, and killed another person. He was arrested. He got away. He went back to Antioch. An arrest warrant issued for him. He was extradited from Illinois to Wisconsin. He was put on a high bail, like $1 million. Mr. My Pillow posted bail for him, and he got a real high-powered lawyer to defend him, who since has bailed out. And his defense is self-defense. And there are some videos and other things, and without ruling on the case, there's enough there to make a good faith self-defense in this case. Well, he's now been sued, and the basis for the suit is that the cops favored him because he was white. They brought the whole critical race theory package into this, as though there isn't enough controversy already. And that he got away with it because he was white. He was aided and abetted by the cops. He was working in concert with the cops. There's a suit against Kenosha, against some police officers, etc., all based on critical race theory. I will keep my eye out for more news on that. It is unfortunately so typical that even in the whole George Floyd incident, none of the media cartel pick up on this, but Derek Chauvin was never charged with a hate crime.
That's right.
Never charged with a hate crime. Nothing in his trial ever suggested that what he did was motivated by race.
Nothing.
Not a thing. So the prosecution's theory was that he didn't follow training guidelines and that he was guilty of manslaughter because somebody was killed at his hand when he was committing another crime. I was never able to figure out the legal basis myself, and I suspect there'll be a lot of really interesting reading coming out of Chauvin's appeal. But, you know, if you're really following this whole critical race theory, there was not a racist dimension to the whole thing except for the looters, the arsonists, etc., who made it into a national cause célèbre that this was pure racism, systemic racism, etc.
Even his victims were white, except for the first one in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Right? The skateboarder who attacked him on the ground. So I'm not sure where the racist element comes from.
Oh, you're back to Kenosha.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah,
Kenosha.
yeah. That's right. Yeah. It was pretty much a white show. But that, the facts mean nothing when you get into critical race theory. You start out with 1619, something that happened a long time ago, pretended it happened today, apply today's manners, morals to it, identify it as another example of systemic racism that can only be fixed when we junk what we have and come up with a whole new operation. So let's head for Churchill Downs, and when I come out of Churchill Downs, I'm going to be talking with Drive-Through Jack, who didn't get a chance to get on yesterday.
Here at Guam Auto Spot, we have the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars, like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage, as low as $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Or this 2021 Buick Encore, as low as $237 per paycheck, 0 down for 72 months. Call 478-AUTO to schedule a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Jose, I haven't heard Drive-Through Jack's theme song lately. Come and get your chow, Jack.
All right. Yeah, I was waiting for that. I'm having Korean today again.
A lot of callers, Jack, have a nom de tall tales, like our Carl and our Keith, etc. But no one else has his own theme song.
Well, Bob, I could segue and say I'm having Korean food today again in support of my brothers and sisters, because Lord knows if I go to bed tonight, if we go to bed tonight, wake up the next morning, we find out that we've pulled troops out of the DMZ zone. And it's not a far-fetched idea. But, yeah, I'm calling it. It's raining. It's eased up since I've got on the phone with you, but it's raining real hard. The outside lanes are flooding. Some cars are stalled. Just be real careful out there. And, it's bad out here. And I think it's so bad that the Cabrera score went up 2 points. But don't tell the governor that. She's gonna blame us unvaccinated for this rain, and might have to go into another lockdown. But yeah, Bob, I have a question for you. I have a serious question for you. I was reading over the mandate again. I'm just laughing. I just don't get it. Maybe I'm that, ignorant, but the way it's printed, it says that if I don't get the vaccine and I work at a restaurant, and the other person let's say there's just only two of us, and the other person is vaccinated, that because I'm not vaccinated and I'm working at the restaurant, I have to be tested weekly. But because that guy's vaccinated, and I heard your stick with Jose, and I say, wow, that sounds just like the mandate. Smart question. I mean, I don't understand why I have to be tested and the other person doesn't have to be tested.
Because you're not vaccinated.
Third base.
That's the only reason. Oh, my gosh. But we're both capable of getting the virus. And, if I come out negative and he comes out negative, he's vaccinated, I don't have it, why do we still have to wear the mask? And if by somehow one of us comes up positive with the virus, or both of us comes up, why is it insinuated that I'm the one, the unvaccinated, that spread it and not the vaccinated person?
Because you're not vaccinated.
I know. It made sense now that I asked the question because you did the stick, and I said, oh, yeah, Abbott and Costello. I know. It makes perfect sense now. So I don't know whether to cry because of these policies and these executive order or to laugh. But, you know, I can't laugh that loud because, you know, my wallet's almost empty just like everybody else. And we're hurting out here. Businesses are hurting. Everybody's hurting, man, except for, you know, corporate Guam and this administration. So I'll tell you what, Bob, I besides the pro-life protests, I'm thinking about just going to this next one, come rain or shine. It's just getting really pathetic right now, and it just doesn't make any sense. And the hammer is coming down on us. I think the only way, if she does issue another executive order is to quelch whatever protest that's coming up online. But it's just getting bad, and I just don't know what to say or do, you know? If you have any suggestions.
I think you're on to it. If they're going to have a demonstration on Friday August 30 at the governor's office, be there. Yeah.
Yeah. The protest that I've really attend to religiously is the pro-life protest that happens every March. The Walk for Life, the Stand in the Sidewalk for Life, whatever they want to call it, I'm always there. I still got the original posters and the ones that my son made when he was going to middle school. So and now he's in college, so I still have those posters. But yeah, I'm seriously thinking about going to this one because it's just getting ridiculous now, and nothing they say makes sense, and they're just making it worse. So you know, it's at that point, and you know, we have our points, we have our limits, and it's just really reached mine. So I'll be listening to the radio and see when the protest. I heard August 30th. I heard this Friday. So whatever, you know, just keep us posted. And about the Witten, you know, I just backtrack about the Chauvin and the Wittenhouse thing. If you remember, they weren't even allowed to raise funds on GoFundMe for their defense.
Yeah.
Because they were while Black Lives Matter and that lady just a couple of weeks ago, she had a GoFundMe and it wasn't even her children.
Yeah.
it's you know, it's getting to the point that even we can't support the people that, you know, we have the same ideas and we have the same beliefs and we believe in the same. We can't even support them in their time of need. And it's just getting to the point. It's just out of reach right now. And I hope it gets better, but I don't. I think we're just preparing for a Harris administration, and it isn't going to get any better. It's just I don't think we can wait, to tell you the truth, to the next election. So we need to, I don't know what's going to happen, but whatever path we're on right now isn't working. And,
okay, Jack, I got you.
All right, Bob. Drive safe.
All right, I will. Thank you. As luck would have it, I've got this Rittenhouse article, and going into a little depth here, the family of the man fatally shot by teenager Kyle Rittenhouse during racial justice protests in Wisconsin. Last August, filed a lawsuit on Tuesday against the city of Kenosha and local law enforcement, citing their alleged relationship with white militia members. The federal lawsuit was filed by the family of Anthony Huber, one of two people shot dead by Rittenhouse, then 17, with a semi-automatic rifle during the street protest on August 25, 2020. Huber, 26, was killed when he tried to disarm Rittenhouse with a skateboard. Yeah, that isn't quite the way I heard it, but anyhow, let's assume that it was. That would be a good way to disarm somebody with a skateboard, right? After this suit is over, a lot of police officers, instead of carrying firearms, will carry skateboards. Rittenhouse from Antioch, Illinois, is awaiting criminal trial in November on charges of first-degree intentional homicide and first-degree reckless homicide in the killings of Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum. He's also charged with weapons violations and other crimes during the protest over Kenosha Police Department's shooting of Jacob Blake, a black man. In addition to the city and county of Kenosha, the lawsuit names Kenosha County Sheriff David Beth, former Kenosha Police Chief Daniel Miskinis, acting Kenosha Chief Police Eric Larson, as well as John Doe Kenosha Police and Sheriff's officers. The lawsuit claims they conspired with white militia members, signaling their tacit approval to engage in violent, dangerous behavior. Defendants' open support of and coordination with the armed individuals in the minutes and hours before the shootings occurred deprived Anthony Huber and other protesters of basic protections typically provided by police. It was a license for the armed individuals to wreak havoc and inflict injury, the law said. If Kyle Rittenhouse were black, defendants would have acted much differently, the lawsuit argues. Many of the armed individuals with whom the defendant departments had allied themselves were avowed racists, the lawsuit says. So, all in the name of, identifying racism as something bad, something we want to eliminate from our society, basing everything we do on race. That's the way we do it.
Do you notice they gave the race of the reason why the riots were happening, but never the race of Rittenhouse's victims?
No, because they're white kids.
Exactly.
Yeah, white guys. It doesn't fit the narrative. And as I comb the internet every day as my show prep, I see lots of situations where police officers have shot white people, and it's kind of a mock's next. Why? This isn't news. It's, so a dog bit a man. So what? So a cop shot a white guy. So what? There's an interesting one going on in Hawaii right now, though, where the police killed a
Carolinian, right?
A Chuukese person, yeah.
Yep.
Very interesting. And the prosecutor really wants to make this happen. So he went to the grand jury, and the grand jury wouldn't indict.
Isn't that interesting? The same thing happened here on Guam.
Where a grand jury wouldn't?
No, where a shooting happened where the cop was Chamorro and the victim was a Carolinian.
Yeah.
But you didn't hear any cries out from anybody here on Guam.
No. So the grand jury didn't have brought back a no true bill. So then the prosecutor scheduled what's called a preliminary hearing. And many, if not most of the states, you could accuse a person of a crime by the use of a preliminary hearing, which is a hearing before a judge who only determines whether or not there was probable cause to believe that a crime was committed and that the defendant committed the crime. If that's the case, then it'll go to trial.
Isn't that called a grand jury?
No, we do the same thing here. When a defendant is indicted, the preliminary hearing is scheduled, I think it's 10 days down the road. But it's almost, I think, as far as I know, always mooted out because there will be an indictment before the 10 days elapsed. So, but very unusual for the grand jury not to indict and then to schedule a hearing. Okay, that's it for today. We'll see you back on Tall Tales tomorrow. Adios. See you then.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Warnings of an imminent attack. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. The U.S. Embassy in Afghanistan warned Americans late last night to leave the Kabul airport area immediately. Now a British official's warning of what he calls very, very credible reporting of an imminent attack targeting the airport. Australia's Foreign Minister Marise Payne also issuing this alert.
If you're in the area of the airport, move to a safe location and await further advice. Afghanistan remains highly volatile and dangerous. Be aware of the potential for violence and security threats with large crowds. There is an ongoing and very high threat of terrorist attack.
France says it won't be able to evacuate its citizens after Friday, while Denmark said its last flight has already left Kabul. The U.S. evacuation deadline is Tuesday, August 31st. Republican Congressman John Cato of New York, who sits on the Homeland Security Committee, said earlier the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan is opening the country to other terrorists.
We're going back to a pre-9/11 footing in Afghanistan, which in and of itself is a huge danger for the United States.
Cato speaking on Fox News. About half of Florida's nearly 3 million public school students are required to wear masks in the classroom, as at least 10 school districts defy Governor Ron DeSantis' ban on such mandates.
We think the parents are best situated, to make that decision. And if these entities are going to violate state law and take away parents' rights, obviously there are, it's the way it works. There's consequences for that.
And U.S. stock futures slightly lower at this hour after the S&P 500 and NASDAQ closed at record highs yesterday. America's listening to Fox News.